Neighborhoods Committee Development Corporation. I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
Move to adopt the agenda as submitted.
I need a second.
Second.
Any opposed? Then we're on number 3, approval of the minutes. There are 2 sets of minutes that are attached from the 13th of November and the 20th of November. I'll give you a minute to read them over or look them over, and then I'll need a motion to adopt.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes of November 13th, 2023, and the regular meeting minutes of November 30th, 2023.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any opposed? We have a time for appearance by citizens. Anyone like to speak? Seeing none, we will go on to unfinished business, and Mr. Boxley, can you take us through the information?
Absolutely. Good morning. First off, let me say thank you to our guest citizens that have chosen to be with us this morning. Our agenda item for today on unfinished business is the review, consideration, approval of our fiscal year 2024 through 26 strategic plan. As you'll see, we have made the revisions that were suggested by the board of directors at our previous meeting. I have also spent some time making sure during that process that our strategic plan aligns with our purposes and mission as outlined in our organizing documents, as well as the alignment with the town's 2023 to 2025 strategic plan. And our strategic plan aligns with both our organizing documents as well as the town's strategic plan. So I would like to open up the floor for comments from our board of directors. If you have any particular comments or any final changes or amendments that you would like to see, please let me know at this time.
If you give us just 1 minute,
Absolutely.
we will review again. Jerry, I'm assuming you have a copy of this.
Yes, I do. And I approve.
Thank you, Terry.
Well, I'll say that I worked with Mr. Boxley on a couple of different occasions regarding some specifics in this strategic plan. I see that those comments are included, and I appreciate that. So I'm ready to support it as well.
Thank you.
Boxley, I've looked at this, and in the meetings that we've had, you've made the revisions, so I'm ready to support.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I read through them as well. I don't have any.
Thank you, Mr. White.
I think the workshops that we had served us well, the collaborative effort with us and the citizens. So I move to.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
I like that it's so thin. No, seriously, Mr. Boxley, we applaud your efforts with listening and learning, sort of understanding the as you described it, the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats, and incorporating some strategies and goals that we can accomplish in a hopefully fairly short period of time. I too am in support of this, and I just continue to encourage you and the rest of the board and the community to that degree, that if you take note of one of our first objectives here, which is to deal with the corridor situation and the Stony property owners that are impacted, that there is indeed work being done there. There is indeed conversations that are being had, and it's going to take a collaborative effort to assure that the corridor is addressed in a proper manner, and understanding it's not just the town that's going to be the ultimate decision maker, the ultimate entity that's going to sort of support the mitigation actions that may or may not happen. I think it's important for us to continue to realize that we have to have positive conversations with our stakeholders along the way. That's town, county, and state, and at some point federal, right? I think it's important for us to realize as a board as far as how we're going to pull everybody together so that that puzzle makes sense.
Thank you.
Chair, I can make a motion if it's your pleasure.
I would like you to.
I move that the Board of the Gullah Geechee Historic Neighborhoods Community Development Corporation approve the strategic plan as presented by the Executive Director.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Carrie. Any question?
From the public?
No, for the public? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you all so much for your support, and now the real work starts.
I have a request, because Alex brought it up as an immediate priority. Mr. Boxley, can you give us an update on the conversations around Stony? There were comments made yesterday at the town council meeting that intimated that nobody was in contact with them outside of a small group of citizens who met a month or so ago.
Yes, so interestingly enough, I was tuned in and watching when that comment was made, and frankly, I don't think that that was an accurate depiction of what has been going on. So, to answer your question, the meetings continue to occur. I met as recently as Monday with one of the property owners in the Stony community that is directly impacted, or that would be directly impacted by highway expansion. And we are currently, as a matter of fact, later on today, going to work through the details and logistics of a community-based meeting that will occur at the public library. We'll firm up the date, but a public meeting at the library for the residents at large of the Stony community, so that we can begin to gather some feedback. And again, I'd like to go back to the comment made by the individual and address that too, because this project has been considered, talked about, and up for debate, if you will, for approximately 6 years. So I think that we have to consider the amount of time that this has been in the public realm and the opportunities that have existed to engage the community as well. So we as an organization are only a little over a year old when it comes to the specifics of our incorporation. And it's unfair to place the onus on the Gullah Geechee Historic Neighborhoods Community Development Corporation as the sole entity responsible for engaging the community, when this has been a conversation that has been occurring for about 6 years. So I do want to state that for the record. Number two, we are actively, and I mean actively engaging members of the community that live in the corridor, as well as looking at broader opportunities to get, garner feedback from the residents of the Stony community. So, these things will be ongoing. I know that, that we have some deadlines coming up. And my goal is to make sure and gather that feedback and organize it in a means by which we can have a legitimate understanding of the means by which the community would like to see the Stony area developed as we move forward. Now, one thing that I can say that is a reoccurring theme regarding the Stony community is that prior to the bridge being built, to the original bridge in the 1950s, is that Stony was a major economic and social hub of the Gullah community. And the elders in the community that I've spoken with have expressed a desire for this area to return to an economic engine that it once was. And so whatever we can do as a community development corporation, whether that is supporting business development, which is outlined in our strategic plan, supporting business development, supporting real estate development for the property owners in the area. I think that these are things that will go a long way in achieving the goals that have been thus far identified in our meetings with property owners and with members of the community at large.
I appreciate that. Thank you. A question that comes to my mind is that in your Stony neighborhood, ensure the stabilization and preservation of Gullah Geechee neighborhoods, cultural sites, and history. There are 1 through 8 items included in that. Are we developing at this time a list of things, ideas, proposals that will be presented to the town council? And if so, have these been vetted by citizens within Stony?
No, we have not developed an exhaustive list as of yet. And that is something that we will begin the process of in our first public community meeting that we, as a community development corporation, host. And so I have not, I do not have feedback from the community at large. So we do not have that feedback just yet.
Thank you.
Are you planning on having that in time for, what's your timeline?
Absolutely. My timeline, and thank you for that question, Madam Chair. My timeline for the first community meeting is within the next 2 weeks. We had a tentative date of the 29th. However, what we're working to do now is to solidify the support, or not necessarily the support, but the getting the word out, should I say. So we're working through our marketing and communications department about getting the word out. And if we don't host it next week, we will host it the following week, so the first week of March.
One of the issues, Mr. Boxley, in communicating to the Gullah community at large was at the last community meeting that we have to use various formats to communicate because one simply does not work. So as you're communicating out to the neighborhoods, are you doing it in a variety of ways?
Yes, we will have paper, hand flyers, basically, flyers, text messages, as well as email communication.
For the meeting, I mean, since it's, I guess, like no one is formally owning the communication, I mean, is the county invited, is the FAA invited, is council invited? Like, how do we get past, like, you know, all the organizations that have to make this decision, they are coming to hear, right? That way it's not, it doesn't all fall on you to be spokesperson for all those residents, right? Like at some point, other folks have to start coming to the table. So if you have a large community meeting, they come to the table, but when do they come to the table, even to the table, to the residents' table, right? Like what's the, I guess that's part of the conundrum, like no one's owning it.
Thank you for that.
Okay, that's what it sounds like.
I definitely hear where you're going. For that, I don't have a direct answer. All I know, what we can do is support the communities, the information that is disseminated to the community as we receive it. So that, and Councilman Brown mentioned a moment ago that there are multiple parties, as you have just identified, that will have to come to the table. I think that we are in a good position based on some of the previous meetings that we've had with the county as well as the state Department of Transportation. However, there is a definite need for everybody to be in the room at the same time.
Have you given any thought to securing or reaching out to get members of the community who have a vested interest to help you champion and drive people to these meetings? So as opposed to being outside in and be inside out, to join in with you, give them a sense of ownership and involvement in it. Has there been any consideration, or is that currently being done?
That's definitely a consideration, and I welcome the opportunity to speak with you offline about some of that, because I know that there are things that you and I can work on to support that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to offer thoughts here around sort of this community-based meeting, which I think is important. We have to have that. We sort of have at a very high level right now areas of concern that we want to make sure that folks know that they've been heard, right? But also want to just offer up that this is a very complicated process, right? Because a meeting of Thomas having in the living room with a family that is directly impacted is going to be a different conversation than a meeting when a whole lot of people are showing up and offering up other type of opinions. Okay, so I just want us to be very clear that the complexity of this, because you could very well show up to a public meeting and someone who is not being directly impacted has a very powerful voice as to what they think should happen, that may override someone who is actually impacted. So I just want us to sort of balance that along the way, and we've already identified, who the families are, so we have that list. But just sort of understanding that as we're moving forward, I think is important as well.
Follow up on that? How many residents of Stony would be invited and would come to a meeting like that? If it were exclusively for Stony to go over a list of things that are being contemplated for the benefit of Stony residents in a quote-unquote mitigation offering.
Let me respond before you go, Mr. Boxley. So, Mr. Boxley, Madam Chair, myself, participating in a meeting with the county. Okay, it's the first time the county had engaged with the property owners that are impacted. And, from my count, every family was represented at that meeting, okay? So, to answer your question, Mr. Ames, I think is how we target and what the discussion is going to be about as to what type of participation you're going to get.
Thank you. I'm following up on your original point, and that is there are probably two conversations.
Yes.
Yes, and so to follow up with the response, there are absolutely, if not two, 4 conversations, right? So we've had the conversation with those that are directly impacted, i.e. property owners within the corridor, the area of study. Second meeting, community at large. I have no way of identifying how many or no way of predicting who all might show up. Hopefully it would be a good turnout, but have no way of predicting. Third meeting, community, state representatives. as well as county representatives, right? So that, to Mr. White's point, everybody can be in the room and we can start to have a conversation around what appropriate mitigation might be. So, and then the potential fourth meeting would probably involve members of council that represent people from the Stony community, i.e. Councilor Brown, and some other council members that, town council members that have vested interest, as well as members from the county and state and the community. So I think that this, you know, this is definitely something that is very, very high priority. And I do see room for a lot of communication that needs to take place so that folks do have an understanding of what's going on.
Madam Chair, I would ask that if it's your pleasure and the pleasure of the board, that we charge Mr. Boxley with creating a critical path from today to end result of us being before council with sort of a position statement or mitigation plan.
I think that's appropriate, and is that a motion?
It to be, absolutely.
Saying that, we don't need to hear the motion again, we know what we want to do. Can we charge Mr. Boxley?
Absolutely.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I have a question. So that meeting between you guys, the impacted families in the state, was it more like the county, was it a listening session on their end, or like just what was at a high level, the tone, kind of outcome of that?
I think, and then you can comment, Councilman. I think it was a listening session. I think it was, for lack of a very better term, rehashing of the past and talking about what has happened before. I think the county, I was really, really quite impressed with the county because they are ready to move, given what we want to do, not what they're forcing us to do. I think that's a major change in what has taken place in the past. So I think it was a very productive meeting. We have a strategy and a plan to move forward. And if there are roadblocks, how to mitigate those roadblocks.
Yeah, the overall meeting was positive, Mr. White, and I was pleased that such a meeting finally took place, okay? But I also want to sort of reiterate that we are dealing with a very emotional situation, okay? So in a lot of cases where conversations that maybe Mr. Boxley had with individuals where he had gotten to a point, okay, let's just say point C, right? This meeting, we reverted back to point A, okay? And it's to be expected, right? You're talking about generational attachment, okay? But it needed to happen, okay? It needed to happen. So at the end of it, I felt as if we walked away being at that point that Mr. Boxley had gotten the families, which is point C, and now how do we get to D, E, and F, right? So to that extent, I think it was a positive. But I'll also just say that the county did have their ears wide open, okay? And I think they also walked away with a different perspective of what was happening in the Stony community. So I was pleased for that. And I can't say this enough. Just because those families that are directly impacted may be blood related, they look alike and talk alike, does not mean that they all think alike and want the same thing. And that's just very important for us to continue to realize that.
Has council, have you guys had any, I know your decision is sort of, looming. Have you guys had any conversations about it, or is everyone tracking it?
You're saying town council?
No.
Okay. how do we make sure like they are, everyone, I mean, you guys are aware, I've seen Patsy at meetings, but how do we make sure that the other four are tracking with the information?
I think that's part of the critical path that we are charging Mr. Boxley with, is that there needs to be a check-in, update of sort to town council along the way.
Is it, I mean, are these the meetings, I mean, are they open invitation for members of council to come? Or is it, I mean, I know that Alex, you represent the area, so you're probably in 99.9%, but, you know, I'm just curious of like the interest of,
Councilman Becker is here today.
I didn't see you over there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
I didn't see you over there.
I'd like to make a comment on the critical path. How to articulate this? It seems to me that our client, when we're talking about Stony, are the residents of Stony. And that we serve our ultimate goal by respecting them and their opinions. That we ought to be relatively sure where their heads are. We've been asking questions of them over the last 6 years. Are we at a point where we think we have heard them clearly enough that we ought to be putting in front of them ideas that we can hear from them make sense? If we get to the point where the CDC's plate of ideas are adopted or approved by the Stony residents, then I think it's wise to go to the entire community and say, these are the things that have been developed with the Stony community. And my other thought is that the meeting where we are talking about any kind of specific proposal, the county representative ought to be there, so that the county is on the ground floor listening at the same time to these conversations. Now, I would ask Mr. Boxley, am I skipping some steps there, or what are your thoughts on that?
So you mentioned that these conversations have been happening over 6 years. Who's been having the conversations? Because earlier you mentioned that there are individuals who say that there have been no conversations happening. So I'm kind of at a space where I'm starting from ground zero, right? When we talk about the community's input, no, I don't think that I don't think that you're skipping any steps, but if there have been conversations that I'm not aware of, I'd love to see the notes, so that I don't have to go out and recreate the wheel to a certain degree. But I think that it is definitely important that once we get to a place of understanding exactly where the community stands, I think that that would be a good point in time to engage the county and the state.
Well,
I'm not in disagreement with what you're saying, but I'm definitely I'm not understanding where the other input is located, where that's housed, or who has those documents and notes.
Let me clarify my statement. They have been asked questions over the last 6 years.
and if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Boxley, in our meeting, they referred to that people keep coming back and asking them questions or saying things to them. And I think in my mind, it's a good position to start at ground zero, because a lot of that is not written down anywhere. A lot of it is, I'm in a family and there are 3 family members and each one of us have a different idea about what we want to do and we can't come to agreement. So I think you coming in as through the CDC is going to help them put together, this is what my expectation is. And if I'm not mistaken, that's what's occurring right now with you.
You're absolutely correct.
What we're facing is 6 years of, sounds like disappointment, distrust, on both sides, maybe more on one than the other. It's a heavy lift to undo the damage that has been done in those 6 years. So we've got to find a way to get the thinking heads because there's a trust issue here. And I don't know whether you're going to mend that, fix that, or whatever you want to do to get that right again. Because for 6 years, they have not been heard. They have not seen anything that's, like even resembles progress from their viewpoint. So that there's a lot of work to be done. That's why I say it's imperative. It's imperative that you get as much participation from those who have a vested interest, however differing their opinions may be, as Alex has suggested. Because when you get the powers to be to come to these meetings and we don't see the faces of those who live there, however differing their opinions are, then the takeaway is, okay, what are we doing and why are we here? I thought there was a problem and I only see 2 people here. And so we're going to have to, however differing their opinions are, we're going to have to be certain, and there's going to have to be a lot of mending and healing of promises made and promises not kept, because perception is, in some places, a lot of people's reality, right? And you can't go to people and tell them that they're confused because they walk away with the perception and nobody's ever addressed it or to change it. So there's work to be done.
Raised very valid points, Mr. Johnson, in that, it's more than 6 years. It's more like 60 years, if not more. 60 years of reparations. You can put whatever type of adverb on it you would like to, but this goes back further than probably most of us sitting at this table, right? And so it does have to be handled delicately. And I would argue back that it's not just my charge.
No.
It is this entire board's charge. So I'm going to be leaning into you all to accomplish this as well. So just so that we're able to move the needle, because again, there are some that will not forgive, and we still have to incorporate their opinions and the things that they would like to see into our final product, so that moving forward, they feel like their voices are heard as well. So with that, I'll be quiet. And
So, I mean, it sounds like there is a responsibility that we are carrying,
Yes.
Absolutely.
period. Like, regardless of any of the other bodies that need to be at the table, if there's going to be any trust, it has to be established here.
Yes.
And we have to be there with folks when they're in meetings, or when they're not there, represent their interest.
I think you're exactly right.
We get as many out as will come out, as a property owner with a private right, they don't have to come out. So we have to assume that there will be some that won't.
Yeah.
And we'll try to get those that come, and those that come, hopefully they will speak. There's some folks that don't feel comfortable speaking in public meetings, right? So that's why you could have they tell you C, in the meeting it's A, seen that before. So I mean, it just feels like we are that body
I
for this
think you're
process.
exactly right, Mr. Wright. And that's why it's very important who sits on this board. It cannot be about us.
No?
It has to be about the community. And the community has to believe we're about the community, or know we're about the community, and trust us, even if they don't trust the town. So I think that how we conduct ourselves and how we walk our walk and what we say has to be reflective on the community issues and not ours.
Thank you for that comment, Mr. White.
Any other comments? Does the body in the audience have any comments? Anything we've said thus far? Yes, sir. Good morning.
Daniel Anthony. Good morning. Daniel Anthony, President of Jonesville Preservation Society. I wasn't really planning on speaking today, but this conversation piece about communication with everybody in Stony, I have always felt very passionate about preserving historical Gullah lands and the protection of single-family neighborhoods. I've done that ever since I've been here on the island. I think, I agree with everybody here. I think anytime there's anything that to be done, whether it be an ordinance amendment or a project, the people directly affected by that should be the very priority, number one. Since we're talking about Stony, I live on Jonesville Road. I will be indirectly affected. And I believe that the individuals on Stony should be your priority. It should be your main focus. So, Mr. Boxley, I think I mentioned this to you before. The JPS has an already established website, okay? And we reach thousands of Hilton Head Islanders. We reach people in Stony, but what I'm offering to you is make up a statement and allow me to put it on JPS to get the outreach out there, because that goes to all the people looking at it and they start talking on next door and so on and so forth. That communication could be there. I think it could only benefit you, to everybody. And when you have those meetings, we could post that and say this meeting is for the Stony residents, this meeting is for Islanders, whatever you wanted to say. So I'm offering that because I feel really, really passionate about this. So I want to try to help. I've told you that before, you know. I mean, I love this island, and I just think that what's happening in Stony is, over the years, has been wrong to those individuals living there. And I think that, I agree. I think you all ought to put them as priority number one. Find out what they want. Find out how you can compromise, how you can proceed with your agenda without taking advantage of them.
Thank you.
So give me a call. Let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Any comments? Terry? Terry?
Yes.
Comment? Any comments?
I'm just sitting here trying to figure out if there are any other ways to deal with an issue that has been this unsettled for so long. I think we are saying the right things. It's just a matter of making sure everybody gets a chance to express their views, and also understanding that not everyone can get what he or she desires when you're dealing with an issue like this, whether it's a long-standing issue like this or a new one. But I think that open conversation and acknowledgement that it may or may not be ideal and fair is important. And Mr. Boxley, I think you're absolutely the right person to be doing that, and any communication that can be made is good. The problem with multiple communications may be that you start getting social media flying back and forth with all sorts of misperceptions and so forth. I don't know how to deal with that. So I'd just be cautious on that. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying get ready with a need to provide real clarity and have some mechanism that is the official Thomas Boxley point of view or status of the situation that people can look to as the as the accurate depiction of where things stand. I'm rambling a bit, but that's my view.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that comment.
Is it, oh, sorry.
Mr. White?
I just want to
Mr. Johnson?
I just want to tag on something he just said. I think one thing we need as the board to communicate, I'm not saying that we haven't, but if we have, we need to press it. In compromise and in negotiations, nobody is going to get everything that they want. And because if you've got 5 things on your list and you don't get all 5, does not mean you lose. That's just the nature of compromise, it's just the nature of negotiations, and that has to be pressed, the people that needs to be an awareness. It's not all or nothing. So if we're, and I'm certain that we are, presenting that, to the people when we talk to them, but we need to stress that moving forward, because this is not a winner-take-all thing when you talk about compromise and negotiations.
Can I speak to that for 1 minute? At the last public meeting, Pastor Johnson, I came away with the very thought that people need to understand that everything they want, they will not get.
Yeah.
But if they get most of it,
Yeah.
it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And my other thought was, and I was gonna make this in my comments, we can learn from the past, but we cannot fix everything that people have felt and done to them. We're moving forward with information from the past, and we cannot be stuck in the past because that will impede us from moving forward. Those are my thoughts. Mr. White? Yes, please. I knew you wanted to. Look at.
Dr. Terry Grant Robinson, 5th generation here on Hilton. I'm listening to the conversation. I'm here by chance because I'm off today and was able to get here. When you're talking to Native Islanders, you have to speak their language, number one. Number two, you have to address it so that they understand where they are. When we go to the meetings, we have the 70 and 80-year-olds at the meeting, but we're the grandchildren to understand it. Those that paid the taxes are now gone. So who's sustaining the properties that we still have? Have we had a financial training for those 20-year, 30-year-olds so that they can understand the value of what they have? Are we teaching that to our community? Are we standing them? Are we using the learning style, whether they are graphic learners, visual learners, kinesthetic learners? Are we presenting it so that all people in the room will understand what's being transferred? Now, saying all of that, I appreciate what you're doing, but I'm looking at your panel. 2 of you are Benyas, the rest of you are Kamyas. They're not going to talk to the Kamyas. Our church used to be the corridor of where everyone meets and where everyone gets the information. It's not there anymore because even in your churches, our churches, we're still missing 2 generations within the church. I know the perception of the church have changed. The family perception has changed. Mom, dad's not in the household. Grandmother's running the household. What's your answer? You don't have an answer of how to. As the connection is disconnected. The gap is there. The question you're asking is how we can close the gap through the generations within the areas that we do have the connection, even the small connection that we have.
Thank you so much for your comment.
Hey guys, help me with Benya Kamya. I'll just take a moment to sort of, touch on a few things. You make a great point as far as that gap. I think, one of the things that came to my mind as she was speaking is that this strategic plan that we have just put in front of this board needs to be shared with concerned citizens like Ms. Terry Grant, because I don't have the whole thing memorized, but I know we do speak to the engagement of the youth because we understand that that is the future of this culture staying relevant, right? Okay, I understand where, yeah, but
Yeah.
absolutely, that's where we're going. Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's make sure that we get a copy to everybody. Okay, I think it's important that we,
Goal 3 and 4.
yes, it's important that we continue to have these conversations, okay? And, I think I said this before, at some point, we've got to realize that we need somebody that's just gonna go out and talk under the tree, so people know what's going on, right? It's important. Unfortunately, I'm not sure that we can charge Mr. Boxley with that right now because he's got so much on his plate, but it's an important, instrument we need to have in the future moving forward.
Thank you so much for your comments, and to touch on what you just raised, as well as Dr. Grant, what you raised. We do have elements of some of the things that you raised in your comments in our strategic plan. We were waiting on this ratification by our board before we had broad distribution to the community at large. And if you recall, the community at large participated, some of whom are in the room today, participated in the crafting of this plan. So we engaged the community in the development of the plan, and we will get this out now that our board has had a chance to approve the amendments. And you'd be surprised that there are a lot of people that are anxious to get their hands on it. I've had to, Ms. Irvin and I have had to tell some folks that they can't have an early copy because the folks that helped to craft it have not even seen it yet. So yeah, we will definitely get copies distributed to the community. So thank you for your comments, and you are heard.
I mean, that meeting in here, we had, 60, 70, 80 people. We had boards up where we were writing, getting constant feedback, and, all the things you point out is the reason that I'm up here, right? It's land, asset management, it's financial literacy, it's, opportunities for young people to be educated, have jobs, it's preserving our culture and heritage. It's why we moved back, why we want to raise our kids here so they know their heritage. Right? So I'm with you. And I believe that's what we're going to get done here.
Thank you, Mr. White.
Comments?
We keep talking about communication and the multifacets of them and so on and so forth. So I guess my question would be, how do we intend to circulate this to the broader community?
Well, again, we have multiple means by which this can be distributed. We can definitely provide electronic copies. We can provide hard copies at some point. We will also be, again, we're working on a community-based meeting. We can distribute it there. Now that we have the support of this particular plan, we will begin that process of communicating the goals and the objectives to the community. So that's something that was forthcoming. It was dependent upon us having this opportunity today to make sure that we're all on the same page.
That wasn't a question meant to put you on the spot, but more the board. Are we clear on how we best communicate to the community? And it's, I think, people who are in the community who have probably the most germane, relevant ideas.
I make a suggestion, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I think at our next meeting, we should have an agenda item around communication strategy. The town has expertise in that area. I think we should be carving off a portion of our budget to deal with communications, okay? And I think we need to have a robust conversation around what those communication vehicles are so that we are hitting every segment of the community.
Agreed. And I think we should also include the faith-based community here. We have Pastor Johnson here who has access to the ministerial alliance in the community. To your point, Dr. Grant, be a way to make sure that people are getting it through the churches.
Yeah, I was at Mount Calvary on Sunday, and they mentioned it in their announcements that we had a meeting today at 10. I don't, there's a lot of people in the room at Mount Calvary that,
To your point, Mr. White, we are actively pursuing those communication vehicles. So be assured that we are working. We are working. And the fruits of this labor we'll continue to see the fruits of this labor.
are we considered, are we independent of the town? Meaning, I guess I knew we'll talk about it, but like, since social media is a thing, are we able to have our own presence in that way, or are we like town of Hilton Head and it's sort of under that umbrella?
Up to this particular point, we have been utilizing town resources. That's something that we can definitely explore though. There's conversations that Ms. Irvin and I have had about also looking at the possibility of developing a website that's kind of independent. But these are conversations that we just have to continue to have, and we'll get to a viable solution very soon.
What other comments do we have from our audience?
Sorry. I have a question just for Thomas. How's your, so he gave you the list of 10. I think everybody gave you 10 to 15 people. Have you been, high level having conversations with, folks locally, folks in the region? And so how
Yes.
how's it going?
Yes, I have, in between other tasks. Yes, I'm probably about halfway through that list. And everybody has been pretty receptive, very, very interested to see the direction that we're headed. So I think that those conversations are going quite well. Got about half of the list to go though.
I hear you.
40 down, about 40 to go.
What other questions or comments?
Madam Chairwoman, I have one comment. I've listened carefully to the comments about credibility with folks who've got different backgrounds. As an old come here, I've got no expectation that anything I would say or commit to do will have the credibility of someone who's got a shared background with those who are affected by this. And I think we need to realize that. We ought to address that very, very carefully and fully. I'm not sure we have that part covered yet, especially with the younger generation. It is human nature to bond and respect people who've got a shared background, and we're missing that component here. I think that's important to deal with. What we can bring is dealing with people. What I can bring is dealing with people who have got a shared background with me. And one of the elements of this whole program is to get entire island support for what's going on. I can be more effective there than I can be in persuading a 22-year-old fifth generation Gullah Geechee resident that my motives and ideas are genuine. I respect that, and I think we need to make sure we're focused on that.
Agreed, Mr. Brubaker. I slipped a note to my friend here, Councilman Brown, and said, should I speak to the Cumya issue? Because I am a Cumya, as you have identified. And I've been on the island a while, and I can only say, and I'm agreeing with what you're saying, when you approach people, they have to trust you, and they have to know your heart. And I don't care if you're a Binya or a Kamya, people know if you're real or not. That's very clear. So I think we have to approach it very sensitively. I think that we have to send the right ambassadors out to speak to people when necessary. But I also think that trust is a process. And so I think as time goes on, it cannot be done quickly. It has to be done sensitively. And I have to say, as a Kamya, I know that I have some trust of some of the Native Islanders. Others, no, and I will never, because I am not, thank you, Mr. Brown. But that took a lot of work. That took a lot of work. And I have to say, 13 years ago, I'd never heard the term Kamya. And I was like, what is that? And that's you. So, it takes a while. It takes a while. What other comments do we have? I had some comments I wanted to make as part of the chairman's report. A lot of them have already been made, and I'm happy they've already been made. First, I'd like to commend both Ms. Irvin and Mr. Boxley on their work. Mr. Boxley, I know, because we meet weekly, has been working diligently and 7 days a week to push this committee along, but also to build relationship in the Native Island community, particularly those people in the affected Stony areas. And so I want to just go on record to commend both of them for their work there. I also want to say to the community at large, the people in the room, as Councilman Brown so succinctly put, it's going to take all of us working together. This is not just Mr. Boxley's job. This is the job of every person on this council, but it is also the job of the people in the community. And I wanted to just say to the community, don't judge us on everything that's happened to you in the past. Give us an opportunity to show what we can do. And that has to do with trust, but it also has to do with you be willing to come alongside with us and work with us. And I'm going to leave the comments about negotiation to the next public meeting. With the motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Bye.
Aye.
Thank you. Have a good day.